This is Faith Over Breakfast, and my name is Eric Deepen, and I'm sitting across from Andy Littleton. He's pastor of Mission Church and pastor of the Village. And Andy, what kind of conversation did we have? Maybe you could intro it.
Yeah, I mean, I saw an article in the Wall Street Journal that rung true for me and shared it with you. It's about the sandwich generation, and what they're talking about is people our age and younger who are going to experience having aging parents and children at the same time, and what that could be like. And we talk about how that could be addressed in the church, and just we work through some of that. This is not your clickbait topic, but it's the one you need to hear. So tune in.
Yes, thank you, Andy, for bringing that up. Enjoy.
I think I would speak about infant baptism the wrong way right now too.
And I don't want to talk about it.
I really don't.
Check. Okay.
Check. Well, Eric, good morning.
Good morning, Andy.
I've had coffee. I haven't even had breakfast. That's how non-faith over breakfast this feels to me right this second. I'm hungry.
You really feel like we have to have some, I don't know, what's the word? Integrity when
authenticity around the name.
When it comes to the name of our podcast.
Yeah, I bring it up every time, don't I?
You're like, where is my breakfast?
I mean, it's breakfast time. It's a little...
I have an idea.
What?
Okay, so my mother gave us this conductive electric...
little oven?
Not oven, but stovetop.
Oh.
And
so we can cook right here.
Well, even better idea. We can have guest chefs come cook for us while podcasting.
Oh, and you hear the sizzle.
And you hear the sizzle and the crack, and then we get food, and this would be true faith over breakfast. Maybe we could even get anybody who'd like to cook for us, who wants to come at 6 and prep this.
Let's do this, because I've been wanting to go to the restaurant down the street, which maybe in exchange for some advertising. We'll see. That might happen. So we just don't go there like every single time.
Right.
Maybe every time we have a guest chef, we do that, and then if there's no guest chef, you and I meet for breakfast right before. Get our integrity back finally.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's all interesting, but
that's not what we're about to talk about.
That's not what we're about to talk about. I just saw, so interestingly, I'm trying to think how to say this right. So I saw an article yesterday that I didn't immediately see and think about our podcast. I just thought about my family's experience, and I was interested, and I read it, and it's about the sandwich generation, which is there's always a name.
Right. Can I give you the title to
Please.
The article? It says, "I feel very torn between my child and my dad. Demands intensify for the sandwich generation."
And remind us where that article's coming from.
This comes from, it's on Apple, but it's from the Wall Street Journal.
From the Wall Street Journal, yeah. So, I'm 37. My mom is 80, and that's a little unique. That
is, because I'm 47,
yeah,
and my dad is not 80 yet.
Yeah. So my wife and I both have older parents, and so my dad died in 2017 into the year. So I felt like I was facing that a lot earlier than
your peers,
than my peers, except obviously some people lost a parent early,
but on average.
But my dad was actually in his 70s, and it wasn't old age, but he was older. And my mom's now 80, and she's in an independent living home, and we're discussing if she can afford to stay there long term, because the price of it always goes up and Social Security does not. And so she might eventually need to move in with us. And that's fine, and that could be a very valid thing to do. And then my wife's parents are getting older as well, and we just had an incident over the weekend that was really concerning to us, that I won't really go into detail about, but it was like age and how they're doing, because of their age it's going to be a big theme in our family starting now.
Right.
When we're in our mid to late 30s, and we have 12-year-old.
Yeah,
So
that's the important. So there's the sandwich part, a 12-year-old and then 80-year-old.
So we're going to be doing teenage years and 80s. And my grandma, ended up with Alzheimer's, and it was, you wonder. My mom was great. She signed all the documents and already gave me power of attorney and just said, look, this could happen to me, so we're going to prepare for this. But we could have somebody with memory loss and raise a teenager simultaneously, right? And I've had other friends in this boat. And this article basically was saying that this is going to become an increasing phenomena because the baby boomers, so there are a lot of kids were born, and then the amount of this older generation that's now aging is just a high percentage of older folks. And then their children had kids later in life. And so that the gap between taking care of your aging parents and like little ones is closing in. And then it's very rare there are a lot of broken marriages, which was an interesting thing that they brought out, that couples aren't together as much anymore to take care of each other, or younger couples aren't together to take care of the aging parent as much as they used to be.
A single person taking care of another single person.
Yeah, sometimes, or
plus their kids.
And just this, and the fact that there's a lot of homes where younger people both are working. That's different too. Like in the past, it tended to be maybe one person working, so the care of an aging parent was easier, but now that's not usually the case. So they're calling this the sandwich generation, people who are like torn between taking care of their children and doing career at the same time, and then now have an aging parent to take care of. So when I read that, I thought, oh, this is going to be people in our church. This is going to be a thing.
Right.
And the other day, this like kind of affected our church community, got a little brought into that. And I thought, I wonder if we should talk about that just so our people could begin to think about it, that's coming. And then even to think as the church, how do we help each other with this? Because it's going to be a big thing. I don't know. What do you? Yeah, have you seen any of this? Or?
Well, I mean, I see little bits of it, but I know it's coming. I think we're on the verge of it happening in a big sense.
Yes,
where lots of us are experiencing.
That's what they're saying. Is it's always happened.
Yes.
Right, but it's going to be exponentially more. It's going to be a huge phenomena for me.
Right. And I know in Faith Over Breakfast we get into a lot of generational things when we talk about
it's been a little bit though. I almost miss
I almost miss it. So
almost
let's
miss
just
you
talk
talking about generational things.
Well, I think it's important because I think my generation, Generation X, and then following millennials, Z's, we're all on route to make less money than our parents and save less money than our parents. And so
that's going to go well.
Yeah. The thing we have to understand is we're going to be less financially capable of taking care of our parents and less financially capable of taking care of ourselves as we get older.
Yeah.
What's kind of fascinating to me, I mean, having grown up in the 80s and the 70s, like the buying power for pleasure has increased.
Yeah.
Like my capacity to buy, to numb myself out or to entertain myself has increased, whereas my capacity to sustain life long term, afford a car, pay for all the health insurance, pay for life insurance, that's gotten more difficult.
And by capacity, do you mean like amount of capital available, or do you mean more like it's accessible and you feel like there are a lot of the mindset of you and people around you is bent on the pleasure spending?
Here's the example I like to give. My dad, when he got his job as a teacher in the 70s, made somewhere between 12 and 16,000.
Yeah.
I think he paid $9,000 or $10,000 for his house.
Yeah. Right.
Somewhere between 9 to 16, somewhere in
Yeah.
there. I can't remember the exact numbers, but it was almost the exact as his yearly income.
Yeah.
My yearly income right now is, I think, I'm trying to think of, my house is like 5 or 6 times the value of my income.
Yeah.
It was about 3 or 4 times when I bought it.
Yeah.
It keeps increasing and increasing, and so my capacity to purchase things that matter is changing.
Yeah.
Whereas buying I can buy a big screen TV,
Right,
for $300, $200.
Yeah.
Craigslist, if I'm lucky, I might get it for $90.
Right.
Because so that kind of thing has changed, I think.
Yeah.
So when you look at like the average amount of money people have in their bank accounts has gone down compared to what it was 20 years ago, 30 years ago. So I'm just saying financially, we're not prepared to be taking care of a teenager and trying to figure out how to help our parent, your mother who may not be financially able eventually to sustain the living that she's in, which is really simple.
Right. Because right now it's like everything's done for her. There's a little, if she happens to fall, there's a little button to push. There's the meals are made. There's a person that could come hang a picture if she needs it. That's, the current situation is very easy, but it's probably not sustainable that long. Yeah.
And so what you were saying about 2 income. Now your wife works, you work, my wife works part-time, I work. It's double income families who are still struggling to figure out how to make it with all the different expenses. So,
there we are.
So when you ask the question about how does the church do this, I mean, we're going to have to revamp.
Mm-hmm.
Like we're going to have to begin to think, like the early church model may become more and more relevant as we move on, that everyone had everything in common and you gave to who had need.
And and I know that's kind of simple, but that gets brought up a lot, like how it should be that way.
Right.
But I've yet to observe anyone who's brought it up, probably including myself, actually exhibiting what that might really look. I mean, I see people sharing. I do. Actually, let's see. I'll say there have been several instances for me. One of the ones that felt just the most raw and simple was when on Christmas Eve we had a carbon monoxide leak, and our carbon monoxide sensor went off at our house.
Because you talked about this on the podcast.
I did, yeah. And then the fire department came, and then the gas company had to come, and they found, because our house was built 60 years ago, that our gas lines weren't perfectly sealed.
Oh.
Which the guy said, "I am so sorry." He said, because all the houses around here are like this, but we just don't have to test them because they haven't had carbon monoxide leaks. But as soon as we find that your gas line doesn't hold 14 pounds of pressure, we have to shut all your gas down. So he's like, if I went and tested your neighbor's house, it would fail. They'd all fail. But yours happened to, I actually had to test you. So now you have no gas and you have to repipe your house. So then all of a sudden on Christmas Eve, we don't know where our carbon monoxide leak came from because it didn't come from the gas line. But we have all of our gas has to be repiped. We find out real quick. It turned out we needed a new furnace because a part of the furnace cracked. But we went to church with just the knowledge that something was wrong with something, but we also had to repipe our gas. And Mike's wife, I believe, initiated this, or a couple people probably did, and there was a gathering of cash that was just handed to us. And it was beautiful because we have a plumber friend who we called, and he came out, and I swear it was almost dead on. Like what he charged us, which was a great deal, compared to the amount of cash handed to us, it like covered the gas line. So at least we got to get that done pretty quick, and get our gas back on.
Right.
And then the furnace was a whole nother And then my mother and father-in-law gave us a no interest loan to get a new furnace.
Right.
So there was very much like if we had just been left to the normal,
sure.
Oh my gosh, right?
Right.
If the church hadn't been there. So in that moment, I very much experienced, so I don't want to downplay that, but generally the idea, even in that, of like everything we own is in common is like crazy. Like it's one thing to say like, well, I'll pitch in some cash, and it's beautiful.
Right.
Wow, that was amazing.
So here's the thing that happened on Sunday that I think is interesting. So I was preaching on the priesthood of all believers, and on the spiritual gifts. So I was looking at Romans chapter 12, verses 1 through 8.
Yeah.
And in part of my sermon, because Paul is, he's very clear that we all belong to one another in Christ.
Yeah.
So I thought, I'm going to do a little experiment. And I think I want to help people. So I had everybody, and I clarified that if you're not a follower of Jesus and you don't need to participate, you can just watch us be weird for a second. But I had everybody start out by saying, I belong to Jesus. And then we belong to Jesus. And we worked it through till we got to the point of, I belong to the village. And people was like, okay, I could say that. We belong to the village. Then I challenged them. I said, I want you all to say, I belong to Eric. And we belong to Eric. And then I made them say we belong to a random villager, So it made a lot of people uncomfortable. Now, I tried to clarify that we only belong to each other in Christ, and that we belong to both the larger church and to the local body of Christ. But we don't really sit and think about what those words mean. If I belong to Andy, then Andy's mother belongs to me.
Right.
That Andy's mother at some level is my responsibility as much as it's Andy's responsibility. If Andy is toiling to figure out how to help his mother, and some of it is finance, some of it's time,
right,
then part of my giving, my generosity, is to give finance and time. I don't have
Paul's words, like I gave my life, like
right. Ooh. So when I think, so here's the thing, when I think like, well, that's weird. Like, okay, so in a community like mine and in a community like yours, there's a huge difference between financial capacity, right?
Absolutely.
So some make a small amount, some make a large amount. So I would say that yes, people who make large amounts of money have more capacity to give money, particularly. Right. But what's important to understand is that they're a vital part of the community, and that you have to take care of those people who are helping financially, maybe beyond, in protecting them from
being taken advantage of, and
giving them space in order to recover from whatever kind of work they do that makes that kind of money. Like you have, like it's not just like, oh,
it's not just money, but at all.
Right. Yep. These are the rich people, and now they should take care of us all. And we're actually, it's a level kind of thing, and I have to care. I belong to them, and I have to care for them, and they care for us. But we don't think about it that way, because that's really uncomfortable.
And I think a really sad thing that happens is our materially, people who don't have as much money tend to think they don't have either anything to offer, or that they don't have the responsibility, which is not
right
at all what the scriptures are getting at, right?
Right. Well, and that was that in my sermon, what I ended where we went with the gifts is I said, well, you look at these 8 or so gifts that are listed out here, these are all the tasks of a priest.
Yeah.
So just because you don't have the gift of giving doesn't mean you don't give generously. Right? There's another understanding of what gifts are. I don't need to get into that, but we all have this task together to live out the kingdom of God and proclaim who Christ is. But if I actually belong to you and your mother belongs to me, that means that a lot of my time and intention has to be focused on you and others. I also have to choose, like, okay, who in my community maybe God is calling me to. Maybe it's not Andy and his mom.
Right.
Other people are,
because it's not right. every single person doesn't have the exact same responsibility. Yeah.
But we're
to
called
the exact same
to one another.
Yep.
To pour out our lives together and to know what's happening together.
Yeah.
Which is why, why larger churches need small groups of people, however you want to form those. Smaller groups, churches like ours need good, strong communication to help each other. But in the end, I don't know, our culture tells us that it really is about you, Andy.
And I was just going to ask, like, how would you define the narrative that pulls us away from this, like, you know, in our culture, but also just maybe even within Christianity, that tells us that's not what we need to be worried about.
Well, I think I hear from both the culture and inside of Christianity is that you shouldn't be taken advantage of.
Yeah, you should stand for you and make sure that you're number one, you're taken care of, you're not taken advantage of. That's your number one goal.
Right. And I think the concept of boundaries is
has that gone too far?
It has gone too far.
Yeah.
I mean, the problem is that people who don't have boundaries, it hasn't gone too far.
Yeah.
They need to learn to have boundaries. But the issue is that we use boundaries or the word boundaries to basically be selfish.
Yeah. I'm just creating boundaries. Like I woke up this morning, I don't feel so good, so I need to have boundaries. So my mom called, so not going to be going over there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, and I mean, I live in a community and in a church where we stress boundaries and the importance of them, but I am concerned at how they are used for selfish action.
Yeah.
So the question I have is, okay, but this is a problem that's coming.
Yeah.
So let's say 10 years from now, your church, which is probably, both of our churches are going to have 10, 12 people who are in this sandwich thing where they have the teenager and the mom or dad who are at the verge of maybe not being able to take care of themselves or not financially being able to, and they're going to need to move in with you or be in a place where every time you're like, gosh, I really don't want mom and dad in that place. Yeah. But I don't know what to do. And I'm stressed out because my kid is not doing well
and we're not preparing for that at all. Because here's the number one thing I hear from people that their aspirational goal after they get married or, have a kid is they want to travel.
Yes.
Every time, almost every single time. And I think my family would say that too. Like, I want to see some places, that'd be great. But right when we get to that part of our timeline is when this data is telling us actually our parents are going to need taken care of. And so and we're struggling to save for the travel, right?
Right.
And so we're going to go blow tons of money on trips around the world. And meanwhile, our parents are aging and we don't have a plan.
Right. So traveling is a big deal.
Yeah. That's one I think just all the leisure stuff, but travel is like at the top of the list of that.
Sure.
Like if we can scrape together an extra, $3,000, we will vaporize that on a trip.
Yes.
Like for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this gets me back. These kinds of conversations.
Sitting in my own conviction right now. I'm just like, oh, sheesh, we're planning.
You're planning on a trip. Well, I mean, I think relaxation, Sabbath.
Yes.
But here's another thing. I think you should go on Sabbath by yourself. That's good. With your family. But I don't think that should be a pattern. I think you should go on Sabbath with people, and you should learn to celebrate with people and to enjoy and play together. I think that's an important form of Sabbath. But I also think...
Do you think the extravagant need we have to see all the wonderful, beautiful places is like... because you can Sabbath... And actually, Michaela, my wife, and I were talking about our year, and we're actually wanting to take a trip with my mom.
No, just to be clear, Michaela is your wife.
Michaela is my wife.
Because the way you said
did I say it weird?
You're like, Michaela, I am my wife. I was like, what?
Who's this? Yes, my wife, Michaela. We're actually trying to take a trip with my mom.
That's cool.
That she wants to take with us, and it might be, she had a couple of knees replaced, but it's hard to get around, and this trip's going to be difficult. In a way. But we're thinking we should really prioritize it. And so then we have this little time when my daughter's got a school trip, and Michaela's like, should we go somewhere? And we had to decide we should take some days off and just stay home.
Right. Because
it's not monetarily smart to go somewhere for us. And truthfully, when we travel, we really aren't resting.
Right.
Like if the goal is to rest and be together, we should just probably stay home. And so, and then I'm doing a little getaway where I'm just going to stay, and my buddy's got a mobile home that his uncle left to him outside of Phoenix. Not probably really exciting. You know, if any of you know me, you know how unexcited I am about Phoenix in general.
Phoenix.
But it's free. It's a free place to go where I can go and kind of just like have a reflective day or two. And, you know, sometimes that's more valuable than going and seeing this incredible thing. Like there are plenty of ways that you can rest without going somewhere incredible that don't really cost much, if anything.
Right.
But I think we don't just want the time off. We want to work on that bucket list.
Right.
Now. Yeah.
Well, and I don't know if we have a real true, vision for communal life at all. And I think, if I had my way, I want to be part of a community that is striving to, live at a place where it's living on 1/3 of its income.
Yeah.
It's combining 1/3 of its income and it's saving 1/3 of its income. Like that it's geared towards this, caring for one another in a big way. And
if you tell me you're stockpiling weapons as well, I'm going to be very concerned.
No. I think it has to be a porous community, right? One that you could leave, but one that people can come into and find a place to belong and cared for, even though they didn't really build it. They didn't build it.
Yeah.
No, I think that's important. And it's not my church is super generous, and they give people cars and they pay for people to do things, but it's not like we're living our life, and we're kind of,
the lives aren't integrated, right? Like there's giving happens, but there's still a distance between lives.
Well, honestly, your mom's not my responsibility.
Right.
Rod's mother was not my responsibility.
Right. When she had dementia.
Yeah. That's the thing. It's basically, my parents are my responsibility, which they are.
Yeah.
But they're not anybody else's. No one else is coming over to me and saying, "Hey, your parents have been so integral into what I, have grown up and done, and so I'm whatever is needed. I want to be there as much as I can to help you."
Right.
And vice versa. I wouldn't be saying that about their parents. Like it's not a thing. But it may have to become a thing.
Yeah.
Like I may have to be more immersed in your life.
Yeah.
But again, we all live far apart from each other.
Yeah.
And we aren't,
often our parents don't live close. Sometimes they do, but often they don't.
And the other issue is you and I have you and I, if I were going to your church, I still don't have any physical connection to you, in the sense that you and I aren't building a table together. Right. We aren't, out in the back working on our garden together to feed each other. Like we have we don't rely on each other to sustain one another. And so it's not a habit then for me to think, oh, well, I also should be here. I'll help. Yeah. Your mom can stay over at my space while you head over there. Like we don't have that interconnectedness.
The interconnectedness that just leads to even seeing the day-to-day needs, right?
And I don't know how we change that, because we live in a modern world, and so I think we have to head that way if we're going to handle some of the things. I agree.
I think so. It's hard to, I think about our church that's generally, and I hate to say this, but it's true, inhospitable to older people. I don't think that's as much true of the Village as it is of our church. I think just the way that we do ministry, the way that we do music, the way that we, the type of recreation that we do, none of it's geared toward older people. So our parents generally aren't interested in being a part of our church with us. That's only part of it. I think the other part is just the complication of doing church with one's parents. That's, I think, something you and I have both faced. Mm-hmm. And so there's a lot of different reasons for these things. But I think if if our church communities need to be more tied together anyway, our lives need to be more intertwined. Our parents are usually another step removed from all of that. So they're in like another church community, typically where all their friends anyway are older. Like my mom's very in community, if you will, at the independent living home, but
right.
people are dropping like flies. I mean, there's an ambulance there once a week.
Right.
At least.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and when you are around death, it speeds your decline towards death, in the sense of like, if everybody is the same age and they're all passing away, your body and mind begins to incorporate all of that.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're around people who are younger than you, you're gonna be more vibrant and you probably will live longer.
Yeah, I think we're like nervous / thinking it's a good thing for my mom to move in with us in like teenage years and stuff, because it's like part of me is like, this is great, she's gonna have to, instead of just being around a bunch of people who are dying, there's gonna be kids over and sleepovers, and that's gonna be complicated, but it might keep her on her she might come out and, hey, quiet down. See a little of that spunk come back. And but then again, It's going to mean that we have to shut up and go to bed, because 85-year-old grandma can't just be up all night, right. And I can't put my my action movie on full blast at 10 at night,
right. You got to put on your headphones.
That one's bothering me a little bit.
Yeah, I'm sure it is, because you watch a lot of those action movies at 10 at full blast.
Oh my gosh, so many. There's a part of me that thinks like, it would be way better than her just watching people drop, and just that expectation that comes with, and just hearing people who are unhappy and hurting and dying, and I think absorbing that same mindset. I don't think that all just goes away, but I think being in a home of people who are living helps.
It does help. And it also helps the people who are going to mourn your death, because they have more connectedness to you as you pass, and they are able to say goodbye much easier,
right? Instead of this like, there seems to be a lot of, I've caught this since having written this book about my dad after his death and referring to his death, is some people's response to having read it or having even just heard the concept of it is some of them don't want to like look at it. They don't want to read it. They don't want to think about it. And a lot of those people are kind of more in their 40s, 50s, who have major regrets of not spending time with their parents.
Yeah.
And I can't say I spent so much time,
right?
But at least my parents had moved onto our street, and I was taking regular walks with my dad, and we were doing stuff together. And then when he died, 2 blocks away at a hospice and in a hospital, and we were there a lot. So we spent a lot of time, like I really got to press in and ask him questions, and, during that 6 weeks. And so I think a lot of people they're not getting that, because they're like across the country. They just find out like, oh, mom died. And then it hits them, where was I? And then they just can't even talk about it.
Right. That makes sense. Yeah. I don't know. When I think about what I was thinking about this while you were talking, I think, so how does change happen? How do we prepare for some of this?
Yeah.
And I was just thinking, one easy task is that when you go to church or to any group of people who follow Jesus together that you're committed to, that you begin to think, what are the implications of me belonging to these people? Like what might I need to know? How might I need to care for them? And how might I need to offer my own need to them? Like what does it mean to belong actually?
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of times we think about belonging as, how do I feel in this group of people? Do I feel connected to them? Do I feel, and that's not the invitation from Jesus.
Yeah.
The invitation is to accept that you belong because of what he did on the cross, as Romans 12 says, in view of God's mercies.
Yeah.
That we might offer ourselves as a living sacrifice.
Right.
And I think that's in itself a kind of a mind-blowing concept.
Oh yeah.
And it's a place to begin because you're not going to come up with a solution.
And there's not a one-size-fits-all solution.
So you have to, I mean, that's why God gave us creative minds, is to begin to process how to do this together.
Sometimes with our creative minds, we just want to do like really cool stuff, and maybe what God has in store is use that creative mind to take care of your older parents.
Yep. Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks.
That was really
Thanks
good.
for talking about it.
I'm glad you brought that up.
Of course, you can email us, faithoverbreakfast@gmail.com. We're on Apple Podcasts, Google, Spotify. You can go to faithoverbreakfast.com to listen.
You can listen to us all over the place.
Yeah. Listen, seriously, for those who follow along with us, share podcasts that you like, give us comments, stuff like that. It's really something that would help us get this out to folks. We enjoy this conversation. We'd like it to be encouraging to others. So we appreciate you listening and share it along.
Cool.